ready? It's the Roundtable with me, Robert Bannon. Welcome to the Roundtable, everybody. My name is Robert Bannon. You're listening to us on the BroadwayWorld or the Broadway Podcast Network. We're also all over social media, on YouTube, and wherever you are. Thank you for being here. You know, getting to do cabaret, getting to sing in New York City, there are some artists who are lauded and amazing at what they do, for telling truths, for singing songs, for having gorgeous arrangements, and then turning the art form into something bigger and more special. And I heard about Ari Axelrod through Robbie Roselle, through all of the cabaret superstars. I call Ari in the Robbie Roselle cavalcade of stars that I also get to be a part of. And Ari has a new album coming out. And Ari has a show coming to 54 Below that I want to talk to him about. But I also have some questions for him because as somebody who supports and loves everything he's doing, I sometimes am scared to say or do the wrong thing. And I want to know, what can I do to make sure that I can be supportive of all of my friends out here? So I'm really excited to have this chat with Ari Axelrod. Welcome to the Roundtable.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I have to say that I'm a really big fan. And
I
remember when this album came out called Live at Birdland, and you do this mashup of you do these mashups on this album that are so brilliant. And I love a mashup. How does the craziness come to you where you put these songs together?
You know, oftentimes I look at the lyrics of songs and I think, oh, if this is like the continuation of the story, or if it could be the same story told from a different perspective, then like that sparks interest in me, and then I look for the kind of connective tissue. And but for me, like if two things musically sound interesting together, it's not enough from a storytelling perspective. So I often look at the lyrics to see if two songs can connect.
Well, before you listen to the new album, people out here, I love it's Sailing in My Ship. When those two songs are
thank you.
Woo, it's so beautiful. So as you get ready for the new release, check out this release so that you know you've done shows at Birdland, sold out shows and shows multiple times. And Birdland is like 54 Below. There are certain places that are just historically the places to sing in cabaret or musical theater in New York City. What's it like from when you started to now, you know, be going to 54 Below this week, to have your shows there? How does it feel?
You know, it's wild, and it hasn't hit me yet. I know that sounds weird, but you know, when I first moved to New York, my goal for like my first 5 years was I wanted to do one solo show at 54 Below. And I did my debut, my New York City cabaret debut, I did at 54 Below in 2017 at 11:30 at night. And to think that like in the first 5 years I did shows at 54 Below and Birdland and the Green Room, and yet still I feel like is often the case with our industry, I'm constantly looking forward and looking at all the things I haven't accomplished yet and feeling like I haven't done enough. And yet I think back to my goal for my first 5 years, which was to do one show. That's when it like hits me that like, oh my God, wow, like college me would never believe it. And those are the moments when I like stop and look back at what I've accomplished, that I'm able to, you know, let it hit me. And I think I will have those moments more when the album is finally released. But right now it feels very much like sprinting to the finish line. And once it's done and out and released, then I'll be able to be like, whoa, wow, we did that. Wow.
11:30 at night at 54 Below. Well, my first show at 54 Below is I took the Thanksgiving Eve 9:45. And they were like, we have a spot. That's all we have got. And I was like, who's going to come see me? But we're doing it because I dreamed of this moment. I get it. And the journey continues. And while we're here, everybody, I want you to know 54 Below, January 18th, 7 o'clock. That's the star time zone, everybody. Just FYI. That's how far.
54 Below. First one.
Ari's now, you know, a place for us, a celebration of Jewish Broadway. And the album comes out the day before?
Yeah, a week from today. It comes out Friday, January 17th.
So I was reading the album is based on the show. You've done the show.
Yes.
And the show has some of the greatest music of Broadway ever. Tell us what's on it.
So there are, I want people to think of the album as a companion piece to the show, that the album should invite people to the show and the show should invite people to the album. But they're not the same entirely. There are songs on the album that aren't in the show, and there are songs in the show that aren't on the album. But, some classics on the album are, Some Enchanted Evening and So in Love and, Bring Him Home.
Yes.
Corner of the Sky.
Firstly, I love Pippin, and I love that song so much. It's one of the greatest ever. You singing Bring Him Home, which is on the live. You have to. People need to hear you sing. You need to hear you sing Bring Him Home, which is one of the hardest songs to do well because it is so soft and beautiful. And I don't have a falsetto like that anymore, Ari. Those days are way over. So this album, though, is it true that you have a 13-piece like you have a full shebang here?
Yeah. I mean, so there are some songs where the orchestra is expanded to the full 13, and then there's some where it's reduced. But I think the smallest we had was 5 or 6. I don't know, but it never feels barren. I mean, what Mike Stapleton was able to do, and Larry Yurman for 2 arrangements, what they were able to do and make 5 or 13 pieces sound like 50 pieces is just amazing. Their arrangements are incredible.
Well, while we're talking, you could follow Ari on Instagram. You could also go to his website and find out more about him as well. And as the stuff comes out, and the more tour dates, because you do shows all around, and there are things always cooking and on the stove here. Did you have to narrow the songs down to get you have a full, you have a full set list of music on that. You have 19 songs on the album.
I know it's wild. Yes. More than narrowing it down, yes and no. I mean, there again, we had to pick from the live album, and ask the question, does this song equal Jewish Broadway? So Everybody Says Don't, for example, is not in the Jewish Broadway show. It's on my Live at Birdland album, and also on the new album, Celebration of Jewish Broadway. So, but more than figuring out how many songs, we had to figure out how to honor what we do in the show with the script, and how to make those points come across without me speaking. That was really what we spent a lot of our time doing, was, can we do this song and have the intention behind it that is very clear when I can talk about it? Can we accomplish that musically? And if we can, then it works. If we can't, we can't do it. So, yeah.
Well, I love the idea and the mission of the show, and the idea behind the show, because you can't talk about Broadway without composers, and you can't talk about the composers and the golden age of Broadway from the beginning till today without talking about how important these composers are. And then you make the connection that they come from the Jewish faith, and that they have there is a gigantic catalog of music written by amazing Jewish composers, etc. So where did the idea, did the moment come out of the activism? Did it come out of the art? Was it just a part of your faith? Where did the idea say that we need to talk about this?
So, I started doing the show in October of 2018. I was invited to Eastern Michigan University by Marty Schichtman to do kind of an evening, like a lecture with music on the Jewish influence on musical theater. And it was a success. And the next day I reached out to Jim Caruso, because the Birdland Theater had just opened, and I wanted to do my first show, Taking the Wheel, that Alex Rybeck, Faith Prince, and I did together. I wanted to do it there. And Jim said, you've done Taking the Wheel at 54 Below and at the Green Room. Do you have anything else? And it was like, well, last night I did this evening of Jewish Broadway. I don't know if that's something you'd be interested in. And he said, yes, how about January? So January 2019 was when we first did it at Birdland in New York. And since then it's grown and evolved and changed and deepened as I have changed, that, endured the pandemic, and definitely since October 7th and just the surge in anti-Semitism that was happening even before October 7th, the show really had to shift and change to reflect the world that we were living in. But the thing that I find to be so important about the show is it is really an exploration of what we give to the world, like what Jews and artists give to the world. And now the word Judaism has become synonymous with anti-Semitism, and in many cases even just Israel. And so I wanted for there to be something that I could do that would make, and I've said this for years, that anti-Semitism is not a Jewish thing. Judaism is a Jewish thing. And not only the religion of Judaism, but the culture, the music, the food, the dancing, the literature. That's who we are, and that's what we fight for. And I wanted people to remember who we are and what we give to the world, not only what we fight against. And that has become increasingly important as the world has continued to change.
That is a really deep way to put it. Is that it's not only what we're fighting, what humanity should be fighting against, but what the people of the Jewish faith and culture are fighting against, but also what you've given, because you can't talk about entertainment, and you can't talk about politics, you can't talk about any medium of show business or in the world business without talking about the influence that it's had. We had on the other day, we had Nia Vardalos on, and we were talking about My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and I was saying that I'm Italian, and I said, and when I watch this, I see my family, and she was saying that Jewish families see their families, and everyone sees their family. There's so many cultures. We have so much more in common than we have that are not. And yet we fight with each other, and we compare each other, and we talk down upon each other's culture. You have taken a stance since the pandemic, and especially over the past year, to be, as I read in an interview, a full-time activist about this. Was it scary? It
was terrifying, and it's only become more terrifying. I never intended it. I didn't seek it out. I just posted my thoughts on Instagram, and several of my videos have gone viral, and I've gained a following. But I think the thing that makes it tough, specifically when talking about Israel, is there is so much nuance. There is no black, white, good, evil, oppressor, oppressed. There is no binary. There is only a gray, nuanced area, and with it, thousands of years of history. And so in order to talk about it, you have to sit in the nuance. And we are in a world that is incredibly binaried in the way that we think, and incredibly divided. And specifically within the Broadway community, which is very, very liberal and progressive. I am very liberal. The rhetoric that has come out since October 7th from extreme progressive spaces have morphed into the horseshoe theory and have become incredibly anti-Semitic. And I have lost so many friends who would have celebrated my murder if I was killed on October 7th in Israel. And that, to me, more than scary, was devastating, because I'm not ever going to get dinner with a neo-Nazi far-right white supremacist. But I've had people in my home, friends of mine, students of mine, colleagues of mine, who after October 7th would have told me that they would have celebrated my death. And that is a tough thing to realize and to wake up to. So more than it being scary, and it is, you don't want to see my DMs and the kind of things that people say to me. But the people I've lost, the people who are siding with terrorists who would champion my death, me, not like a theoretical person, me personally, that has been heartbreaking. I just
I see, we follow each other on social media. I see and I don't think you ever say, this is what I'm saying. Like, I'm not trying, I get scared to talk about it because I don't want to say the wrong thing.
It's hard.
But I have never seen you say anything like, I hope everyone over there is dead and random innocent people are dead. You know, like, you're just saying, can we live? Can we all, can I have the right to live? Can I have the right to have my homeland? Can I have the right to have my space? Can I have the right for my family and people to be able to live a safe, peaceful life?
Yes.
And not use discrimination against people who look like me or me. I don't understand what the argument against that is.
I don't either. And you know, there are, listen, there are extremists on both, and I would even say all sides of this topic. I'm not an extremist. I'm a moderate. I'm in the middle. I'm in the nuanced gray of, like, I hear you, hear me. I hear you, hear me. And I'd like to live in a world where we used to live in a world where being nuanced and critically thinking moderate was the norm, and being an extremist was radical. But now we live in a world where being an extremist is the norm and being a moderate is radical. So I've never celebrated the deaths of any civilians on any side of this conflict. All I'm trying to do is say that Israel has a right to exist, and more than that, that it does exist. And to say that it doesn't is fiction. To call it a myth or you know, a Zionist project that doesn't, you know, exist and it's not real, that is not reality. And if we're going to chart a path towards peace, we have to live in reality. And then I say that Palestinian people deserve to live. They deserve to live freely from their own government. I mean, the Hamas is horrific towards Palestinian people, and Bibi Netanyahu's government has been co-opted by horrific extremists on the far right of Israeli politics. For me to say that Israel has a right to exist, I think people hear that I endorse the current Israeli government. I don't. Like, in this country, people believe that the United States has a right to exist, and people can be in support of America and not in favor of the Trump presidency. Similarly, I can believe that Israel has a right to exist and despise Israel's treatment of Palestinians, despise Netanyahu's government. It's yes and that requires nuance and critical thinking, and it's hard to get people to sit in that.
I'm a school teacher, and critical thinking is not something that is very taught anymore. And we live in TikToks and sound bites, and we don't really deep dive. I understood what you were saying, and I don't because if you change the places, and it's the same kind of thing of saying, like, well, the Holocaust didn't exist. Well, the Holocaust did exist. So we can't have that conversation. And the thing that scares me is, I think, in my little liberal bubble that I live in, that these people that feel this way are all extremists, MAGA, crazy. They're not people. No. They're not. They're not just a little person living in Alabama who's reading the wrong things. They're everywhere. People believe. That's what breaks my heart.
Me too. And you know, the thing that I have found so difficult to watch is, one of the things I love about the Broadway community and the theater community in New York and around the country is the way that we champion human rights, the way that we as a community fight for people who are, we seek to be the voice for the voiceless, both in terms of how we use our voice in song and give literal voice to people who don't have a voice, but also theater has always been on the front lines of the changes in society and in the world, and fighting for and advocating for people who don't have the things that we should have in a society. And I don't understand why it has been so difficult for people to advocate for the release of these hostages. I don't understand it. I don't understand. There were 250 people who were forcibly taken from their homes by terrorists and have been held in captivity for over 460 days. To say bring them home is not a political statement. It has become politicized, but it is not political. It is a call for the end to humanitarian crisis. It is a call for human rights. And it has broken my heart that these people in our community who are so open-hearted in fighting for other marginalized groups cannot seem to find the ease to say, bring them home now. There are 7 Americans being held hostage in Gaza. 7. Hirsch Goldberg Poland was murdered in captivity, and Omar Nutra, who we thought was held captive in Gaza, we found out later that he was murdered on October 7th. He's a New Yorker. He was born on Long Island and grew up going to Broadway shows, and the Broadway community said nothing when it was discovered that he was murdered by terrorists. This is what I've been saying since the beginning. You can and you should advocate for Palestinian self-determination and freedom. Advocating for the hostages to return home does not in any way alienate you from your fight for Palestinian liberation. It doesn't. And if it does, that is a problem. That is a problem with the activism that you choose to pursue, because they shouldn't, and they don't at their core. It should be that fighting for Palestinians and fighting for the hostages can be done at the same time. And if that's hard to do, you have to interrogate why that is.
Oh, I think that is so well stated, and I don't know how people can argue that fact. I don't know. All I know is that why? I know this is a deep question, and not to throw this on you, but why is I grew up, I'm a Catholic. I'm Italian Catholic. I mean, I'm not Catholic anymore. I'm as gay as they come. So I've been kicked out of that too. But I'm saying, why is it such a threat why has the Jewish community been under such a attack since I don't know, forever?
Beginning. Yeah. I don't know. There are scholars who believe that like the roots of anti-Semitism can be traced back to the murder of Christ. Like the people believe that the Jews murdered Christ, and if the Jews could murder Christ and somehow we didn't, it was the Romans, but if the story is that the Jews murdered Christ, that somehow we were able to outsmart the Roman Empire, well then clearly we must be, we must control this and be, wily and working behind the scenes and have our own. I don't know if that's true. I think that's probably part of it. But the reality is that the brand of anti-Semitism has shifted and changed with the times. We are blamed for all of the wrongs in the world, whatever those wrongs are at the present moment. So right now, there are people who are blaming the Jews for the fires in LA, that are blaming the war in Gaza, blaming Israel for the fires in LA because of the war in Gaza. They're not saying anything about Russia's bombardment of Ukraine having anything to do with the war. It's just this insistent need to blame the Jews for everything. We're the scapegoats. We are, and it's not to say that, no, I don't know. I don't know. I wish I knew. And I think that we may never know. But what we can do is continue to make music and tell stories. And I think that to me is like the most beautiful thing about the Jewish people, is that, like, by all accounts, we should not be here. Like, the Romans tried to kill us, the Greeks tried to kill us, the Greco-Syrians tried to kill us, the Mamluks, the Ottomans, the Brits, everyone, the Nazis. Everyone and their mother throughout history has tried to kill us, and we are still here. I was in Israel back in March, and I was looking at the ruins of a Russian bath that existed in the time of Christ. And to think that, like, we think of the Roman Empire as being this incredibly strong, powerful, like multi-year long thing in history. To know that I descend from people who were on planet Earth before Rome, and here I am standing on the ruins of the Roman Empire, and we're still here. That to me is one of the like most powerful things. But not only are we still here, we're still vibrant.
Yes.
And taking it back to Broadway, like, yes, it originated with Jerome Kern and the Gershwins and, you know, Richard Rodgers and Irving Berlin. But this year, the woman who won the Tony for Best Score is Shana Taub.
Yeah.
She's Jewish.
Yes. Sure is.
And for me, like, you don't need to be a religious Jew to be a Jew. Like,
yes.
Just because you're not religious doesn't mean that you're not a Jew. Like, I understand that, like, assimilation and generational, whatever. So everyone's Jewish identity is different to them, but to be a Jew in this country means that somebody at some point in your family history endured some suffering for us to have the privilege of deciding what kind of Jew we want to be. But we're still here. We're still making art. We're still telling stories. And that to me is the most beautiful thing about it.
And you sure are. And you are as well. And I want people to know, like, we can all just like let people live, have freedom to live and be where they want to live and be who they are, believe what they want. Isn't that what we all should feel? Please follow Ari on social media so you can see and hear and listen, and maybe we should all listen to each other a little bit more instead of judging and being critical.
Ask questions. I hear you when you say that you're scared to engage in, you know, the topic on Israel and Palestine and the war, and I get it. I mean, I'm scared, and I have, you know, I've grown up with this, but I think that it's important to talk about it. And if you or if anyone has questions, if something doesn't make sense, or if you want to talk about it and you don't know how, just ask me. Ask me.
I'm gonna
ask anyone that. But like, I can't speak for anyone else. But like, Robert, if you want to ask me, and we can talk.
Well, I appreciate it because I always want to support, and I don't know how to support, and I don't want to do the wrong thing, and I don't want to hurt people's feelings because I want to make sure that I understand, and I don't want to put my foot in my own mouth. But we also need to. But then there's nothing worse than standing on the sideline and saying nothing either. So that's the conflict. But we could learn a whole lot if we go buy a ticket on January 18th at 7 o'clock, and we could hear a lot of beautiful music, and we could celebrate together no matter what culture you are from, race, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, whatever. This is a show with music that you know, and you'll hear about some of the history and what's going on in the world and Broadway's best on the 18th. And the album, no matter where you could live stream it on the 18th as well.
Yes,
so no matter where you are. So you can get all that at 54below.org. And then the album comes out on the 17th. And I saw you have a great record label behind you. I was reading about your, like, Jeff Harner's producer. Jeff, yes. I'm mad at I don't, and every time Jeff Harner's name comes up, Ari, I have to say, you know, Ari has a BroadwayWorld Cabaret Award, and you know, Jeff Harner beats me every freaking year, Ari.
He's lovely, as are you. You are both deserving and worthy.
No, so I want to say the people that are behind it, your producers, your arrangers, the record, you all are top-notch people to put this out.
And let me just say, I have to extend a profound gratitude to Ron Thomas. Ron Thomas is the angel investor who is the reason that this album exists. He approached me last year, or I guess at the end of 2023, and said, he saw my show. He said, I love your show, and I want to help make the album happen. And he didn't help, he made it happen. And we would not be here. This album would not be here. I would not, without him. He is the reason it is happening.
And we're ready and we're excited. So everybody, thank you. Follow and share, get your tickets, stream the album. And I can't wait. Do you know, why have I not come to your show ever?
I don't know. but you'll be there on the 18th.
The 18th, everybody. The 18th. I'm ready. I'm so excited. And I'll be streaming. I secretly have a link of the album, and I've listened to it, and it is so. You're all gonna die. It's gorgeous. So thank you so much. It was so nice and such an honor to have you here. I'm so excited to have spent time with you.
Likewise.